This time I'm opening the show Dulcich style. Engine Masters answers the questions that you ask. This time, EFI versus carburetor for blow-through supercharging. Watch now. That's how we do it. I did a really informal poll on my Instagram and I asked what's better for blow-through boost? Is it throttle-body EFI or is it a carburetor? And about 15,000 people responded, 75% of which said throttle-body EFI. And that's what we're here to find out. Are they right? Are they wrong? We're gonna test both the carburetor and the EFI on our Dart Ford 363 cubic inch small block with ProCharger boost. The carburetor that we're gonna use is a Demon 650 that's designed specifically for a blow-through application. We've made more than 1,000 horsepower with this thing. We know that it's actually pretty rad. It comes with fuel calibration and annular boosters that allow it to flow enough fuel to actually support that 1,000 horsepower. So it is different than your regular off-the-shelf standard cruising model carburetor. Next up, we've got the Holley throttle-body electronic fuel injection. Now there's a zillion of these on the market these days. They're like one of the most popular things because it's the gateway drug to really simple electronic fuel injection. Of course, with a boost, the ultimate answer is going to be sequential multi-point injection, but the carburetor and the throttle body offer much cheaper solutions. But is the EFI really better? Well, I can tell you it's more expensive. This Demon is about $840 at Summit Racing at the time we were filming this. This EFI setup was about $1,650. What is it? It is the Holley Super Sniper Stealth. Now there's a lot less expensive throttle body setups that you can get, but this one is designed just for blow through. That is what the Super is in the Super Sniper. You can get them for 650 horsepower, or you can get them for 1,250 horsepower. That's what this one is rated for. And it all is math on how much fuel they can flow. This one has 8 injectors in it at 100 pounds per hour each. So mathematically, it should be able to support 1,250 horsepower. Now to install these, it's actually really simple. It bolts on like a carburetor. The whole ECU is inside this thing. Most of the sensors are inside this thing, with the exception of the oxygen sensor that goes in your exhaust so that the thing can tune as you drive. It pretty much just plugs in. There's 4 wires if you just want to make it run, plus the oxygen sensor. There's a few more if you want to have it adjust your ignition timing. We do not have our unit adjusting timing on the dyno because we want to make sure that it is the same with the EFI as it is with the carburetor. So our ignition is identical on both of those and not controlled. Also, we're not using the self-learning feature of this unit. We're going to be manually tuning it so that we can show you the tuning differences between the two and how you can actually customize it and do some things that wouldn't happen very quickly on the self-learning program. So it's Carb versus EFI on this engine right here, which you've seen a bunch. It's a Dart SHP that's based on a Ford Windsor, like a 302 block, but the SHP block has a larger bore than you can get from Ford, and it's stroked to 363 cubic inches. It's all forged. It's 10.2 to 1 compression. The cylinder heads are a Dart 225 CNC. The camshaft is a Comp Solid Roller Custom. The duration at 50 is 244, 258, and it's on 114-degree lobe separation angle. The intake manifold that we're using is critical to know because we found that tuning with either the EFI or the carburetor changes radically with what intake you're using. This is a single plane. It's an Edelbrock Victor Jr. We're using all MSD ignition. We got Moroso oiling on this thing. So our plan is to run the EFI first and then see if the carburetor can actually beat it. Okay, guys. What we're going to be looking at here more than anything, well, horsepower obviously, but also that cylinder-cylinder distribution. Does it improve with the EFI versus a carburetor?
What would you wager?
No.
The one thing I am going to congratulate you on right up front,
You may have picked one of the worst platforms there are to test this.
What? What do you mean?
Symmetrical cylinder port heads. Now you have ports that are this long, ports that are this long, and they're spaced evenly about 8 inches apart.
Well,
so
you got to go to worst case scenario, because then if it's good, you know it's all good.
You're absolutely right. It's kind of like passing emission tests. If it works on this, it's going to work on everything.
Yeah. Are we comfortable saying, maybe not as a hard and fast rule, but as sort of a blanket, you don't want to run one of these TBI injectors on a dual plane?
Our experience is not. The cylinder-to-cylinder is still an issue, and it doesn't matter which manufacturer. It's just the mechanical unit itself has a problem with fuel pressure, whether it be 45 or 60 or whatever the manufacturer recommends. I think there's a shear point where you're spraying fuel, even though it may be behind a diffuser. There's been all kinds of things tried. But when you have that sort of pressure, the air is lighter, and it doesn't tend to carry the fuel with it like it would with a carburetor. So on dual plane stuff, we do see more issues with cylinder to cylinder than single plane.
So I guess what I'm trying to wrap up here is that unless you're Steve Dulcich, there is an application for these very simple throttle body
Absolutely.
EFIs.
Absolutely.
It's just we don't know if blow-through supercharging is it. So what we're going to do is have our very first pass here be with our Dart small block Ford with the ProCharger on it, huffing through the Super Sniper Stealth. Say that 5 times fast. All right, fire it up. Let's see what kind of power we're going to make baseline. Well, we just made 744.8 horsepower at 6,700 RPM, and looking at the torque, that was 616.3 at 6,000 RPM. I'm not sure we've got much data to look at beyond that. We can look at cylinder to cylinder, but that won't matter until we get a carburetor on it and have something to compare to.
Right.
So this kind of is what it is. But while you were warming the engine up, Dulcich and I got to talking about something. What did you see?
It seemed like the distribution was actually really flat when it was a steady state at kind of a lower RPM.
At a fixed load, yeah.
Steady state at part throttle.
Right.
My belief is that the butterflies are in a different position, even though the linkage is 1-to-1. And it's, well, the primaries will crack slightly before the secondaries.
Right.
But it's basically 1-to-1, but the butterflies are in a completely different position than they are wide open. So,
Yep.
And I don't think there's as much going on as fast, and I think it just kind of isn't as significant.
What he's talking about on 1-to-1 is the 2 sets of butterflies or throttle blades in the carburetor or the throttle body. You know, on a normal 4-barrel, you'll see the primary start to tip open and then the secondary will come. You can get 1-to-1 linkage for a carburetor too, which is how these are set up, so that theoretically one of them cracks a little bit on the primary and then they both open kind of at the same time. And actually I'm doing this, but I think they open like this. So, but you get the idea.
And that kind of brings up another question from my standpoint. Is it throttle position, or do you think the way they're open, you're getting shear on the edge of the throttle blade as the fuel hits it and then has to like spill over the edge?
I think when the fuel hits it, it may redirect it in a completely different direction than it may wide open.
But all of that adds up to the fact that it could be different with a carburetor, right?
It could be the same. I mean, the carburetor still has fuel above it, and we may see the same thing with a carburetor where it's even at part throttle.
But you're guessing.
No, absolutely.
So I guess my real question is there any way to create a test where we can accurately reproduce?
Absolutely. I can create 100 pound-feet and 4,000 RPM, or, well, it might be a little more than 100 pound-feet at 4,000 just because of the way the dyno operates.
So what would be a highway cruise situation on a hot rod? Say 3,000 RPM at 60 pound-feet?
Yes. I'll make it easy on the Superflow. I'll put engine speed 3,000 and move the throttle till it goes to 60.
Cool.
Okay, let's go do that.
Let's check that out. It seemed like you did actually multiple tests there.
Well, I was trying to find that sweet spot. I was able to get 2,800 RPM and 85 pound-feet.
It's a pretty good load. So what was their distribution looking like there? So number 1 cylinder appears to be about the leanest at 14.1 to 14.4.
See, there's a bunch of 14s.
Then there's 14s, 13s, 13s, and then the richest is going to be cylinder number 4, which is more like 12 ones. Okay, I guess let's just take a quick glance at what it was at your different load, which was what?
Well, we actually decided it was a truck going uphill on this one. So we took 3,600 RPM, steady state, and we threw about
400
400
pound
feet at it. So it was a pretty, actually, believe it or not, this thing makes enough power where it wasn't a deep throttle position. But if this were an NA engine, that'd be, you know, you're rolling into the throttle pretty hard. That's a big load, maybe towing something. It's obviously richer there overall. And I think
so this
when you
is
see
3,600 RPM, 400 pound-feet, greater load on the engine, deeper throttle position. Our leanest cylinder, I'm gonna call number 6 at about 12.8, and our richest, I'm gonna call number 8 at 10.5. So once again, more than 2 ratio points different cylinder to cylinder. So that's the story of the EFI blow-through, but it's not a complete story until you have a carburetor to compare it to. So we're gonna go install a Demon 650 CFM blow-through carburetor.
Got the carbonator?
I do, the Demon carburetor.
So the carburetor that we're putting on is a Demon blow-through carburetor. It actually is an annual booster carburetor also, which helps atomize the fuel and helps it get to each cylinder that it's supposed to more evenly. This is only a 650 CFM. It might show us a little decrease in power because of the restriction, but I think what we're really going to be looking at more closely is the cylinder-to-cylinder distribution.
Looks like it made a little bit less torque and a little bit more horsepower on the peaks anyway. 751.8 horsepower at 6,800 RPM, 612.5 pound-feet of torque at 5,900. I guess we should look at the overlay first and then start delving into what happened and why.
So let me get a different color there to kind of make that clear.
The red lines here are the Super Sniper EFI and black is the Demon carburetor. What's really interesting is the gap up there. What do you think's going on? It's strange that the Sniper fell off and the carburetor kept on going.
You know, I think that we have so much going on here with fuel metering and the changes and it crossing and moving and it needing to be lean in one spot with the fuel injection and maybe it's richer with the carburetor. It might be a little leaner here with the carburetor and that helps the power some.
So I guess the short version is we don't know why the EFI was worse up top. So if you look at the whole picture, the EFI is tiny, tiny, tiny bit better than the carburetor. So this is cylinder to cylinder distribution with the carburetor that he's looking at. And then in red, there it is with the EFI. Are they the same outliers, 1 and 5? No. With the EFI, the outlier was the cylinder number 3. With the carburetor, it's 1 and 5.
Yeah, and they're pretty consistent all the way through. With the EFI, it's interesting
but
how
the
we saw
carburetor
some
didn't
that
do
were,
this.
No. You know, some of these are interesting, what they do, and I mean, it's just...
Because the carburetor stayed further out of whack down here than the EFI did.
Yeah, it did. And that might be a spot where, oh God, this is so close in here.
Right.
We could just fix a couple of the cylinders right there, but that's actually...
But you can't do that with a carburetor.
No,
right?
You can't do it with fuel injection either.
Well, pick cylinders to fix. Yeah, you're right. With the throttle body, you cannot fix that.
Yeah, what it is, it is.
So that's interesting. Overall, it looks like it's delivering about the same AFR. If anything, the carburetor's a little leaner, isn't it?
Take a look.
It looks like it's richer down low. Would you want to look at the collector O2 and see what the average is more that way?
You don't see the black lines collectively above the red lines?
Oh, at the very top, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. At peak power, it seems to me that the carburetor, which is the black lines, is a little leaner, which is higher than the EFI. Mm-hmm. You disagreed with that statement. That's just why I wanted to clarify.
I think what Steve's looking at is trying to look at the average of the 102 we have in
which
the collector.
I would also like to do, yeah.
But remembering that that's only 1, 2, 3, and 4 cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's not
it's
the
only
average
one
of all
bank.
8. It's one bank that we're looking at there.
Yeah.
And we can certainly do that. EFI.
Wow.
So in that one bank, number 3 that went horrendously lean is changing the average on that bank a whole bunch.
Because you had some really rich and some really lean.
Yeah.
It averaged right here to 13-1 with the EFI. And the carburetor is way more rich throughout the curve, and especially up at the top, they change places.
Remember when the power we saw the carburetor make just a little bit? I'll bet if we go back and look at the power, that's exactly where it made it. And that's only a couple of tenths, and it made 5 or 6 horsepower difference.
What Steve's pointing out is that, remember we saw how at the very top of the power chart, the carburetor was a little bit better? This is probably why, because the carburetor was a little bit leaner, whereas the EFI was going kind of pig fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you look at the bottom end of the curve where the EFI had a slight torque advantage, I'm wondering if we took a little jet out of this carburetor, if it would get a lot of that back.
Yeah.
Probably.
And again, but then what do we do about those 2 lean outliers?
Right.
You know, when we start peeling fuel out of it. So it's you know, you've got to kind of walk that tightrope of what's safe and where's the best power at.
Final conclusion, I would say, between the carburetor and the EFI is same power, different problems. Same problems in a different way. How's that?
You know, like I've said the whole time, there's a place for each of these. And in my personal opinion, multi-point sequential EFI has its place, and this may be one of them.
This is it,
Yeah.
I think, for sure.
Yeah.
And on that point, we haven't even discussed how much time you put into fixing this carburetor. I know that you put almost a day into fiddling around with the EFI. Did the carburetor work directly out of the box?
Yes, I had to rejet the primary and the secondary.
Okay. So
Yeah.
by Brule standards, it was easier to tune the carburetor than it was the EFI.
Took me all of about 20 minutes.
Whereas the EFI, strangely, even though it's a computer, you just had to fiddle around with the table in more places.
It was not my inability to tune EFI that caused the extension in time. I mean, Ishmael and Eric as well were both over here, both of our EFI techs, kind of working through some things, looking at it. So they are as experienced as you get and trying to work through some of those things. And we just ended up with more time invested in kind of the EFI thing, trying to sort through all of it. Look, it's good stuff. It's just not every man's stuff.
To wrap it all up, I think we have to repeat the test that we did with the EFI, which is that part throttle steady state.
Okay, so I can go back and look at that data.
Yeah, so let's look at those RPM and load points and see if we can duplicate it with the carburetor and look at the distribution there.
Okay, correct.
Just taking notes about your skills here. What happened?
The carburetor can use a little bit of work.
Okay.
But I think there's some things that can be done between, again, power valve enrichment channels, maybe even looking at the secondary, power valve enrichment channel and being able to feed that a little earlier. There's some, when a carburetor's got 4 or 5 different circuits in it, it gives you some options.
When we did that with EFI, whether it was at 2,800 or 3,600 RPM at those varying loads, the spread from the leanest to richest cylinder was 2.3 ratios in both tests. On the carburetor at 2,800 RPM, it was way better. It was 1.1 ratio. That's pretty tight.
Yeah.
That's pretty good cruise. But unfortunately, when you loaded it at 3,600, it was really bad. We had one hole at 15-1 that skewed the average because the richest one was 11.9-1. So the spread was 3.2. So the carburetor looked worse there.
Part of what I did to help the light throttle cruise hurt the deeper throttle positions on the primary because I took main jet out and it hadn't richened up completely with the power valve channel yet. It wasn't flowing completely, more than likely. The secondaries weren't open. So part of what I did to fix one issue kind of helped create another one.
Yeah. And you could probably fiddle with that, but it's not as easy on the carburetor to work through all those things. In the end, are you ready for the conclusions? I wrote down some stuff. I'm going to just run through them, and then let's see if you guys agree with this, which I suspect you will. So, number 1, distribution cylinder to cylinder is always a problem. Number 2, throttle body injection does not necessarily make that better. As a matter of fact, in many cases that we've seen, it makes it worse. Number 3 is the real clincher, which is an average guy will never know any of that, and maybe it doesn't matter, right? And you will never know, number 4, unless you have 802 sensors or you go to a good dyno shop that does. And there's a good argument there that if you're racing all out, making 1,000 horsepower, you should have 802 sensors. Then looking into the advantages of EFI, I'd say the big one is cold start.
Yeah.
If you look into the advantages of the carburetor, it's half the price. Discuss.
I agree with everyone but number 3.
You will never know?
Some guys will never know, and it may not matter.
Oh, right.
They might never know, but it's going to matter.
It's going to matter at some point? Okay, point taken. How about you?
I have to just give you the unanimous decision by the
Really?
judges here. Yeah, because pretty much that's all on the money, Freiburger. The carburetor, to me, is more familiar, and that's an advantage in itself. And I like being able to maybe stagger jet it or tune it mechanically. And that gives you some more flexibility because all 4 barrels on that throttle body are always going to be doing the same thing. I don't think there's any provisions to adjust front or back or this hole or that hole, which you can get into with the carburetor. Yeah,
So I think carburetor wins.
Yes.
Carburetor wins.
Did you have to ask?
Okay, but now, at the risk of us all appearing to be the dinosaurs that we are, I will say this. The ultimate answer for boost like this is absolutely multi-point EFI, sequential,
Yes.
and Holley does make that in a new self-learning kit that is cheap and easy and worth it.
They make some really good fuel injection stuff, and I think there's no question multi-point sequential. This is the spot for it. You know, it's just a winner.
But ultimately, the carburetor under blow-through boost is not as bad as you think it is. So there you go, dinosaur technology, middle-of-the-road technology, rocket science technology. It's the stuff we test every time on
Engine Masters.
Running wild in the neon glow, heartbeat pounding fast and low, electric sparks beneath my skin. This is the night where we begin. Lights are flashing through the haze, dancing through this burning maze. Feel the rhythm pull me tight, we'll own the world before daylight. Oh, 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 electric heartbeat. Oh, 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 can't stop my feet. Feel the current pull me higher, set the night on fire, fire. Fire, fire. Fire, Shadows twist and shadows fall, echoes bouncing off the wall. Every step a bold embrace. This is our time, our sacred space.